Welcome to a Friday edition of Sunrise Extra. We keep the music going, and we've got movement this morning.
We're dancing, Cristin.
Cristin Severance, can you move the shoulder, bob the head, get a little movement into your Zoom shot this morning?
We are so ready for the weekend, girl. You came at the wrong time or the right time. But we're so glad to have you.
I'm so happy to be here.
We have a serious topic to cover.
We do.
Because you and the rest of our vaccine team have been covering the topic of the COVID vaccine now for weeks, really months since I can't believe it's already been since the middle of December. Now we're talking almost the middle of March since we've seen the vaccine in action. But Cristin, Friday is taken over. Cristin, can you talk about what you did this week? Because we all thought that was a pretty cool setup, the roundtable discussion you had with other stations around the country.
Thanks. Yeah, so our boss called it a Zoom table instead of a round table. But basically, for people who don't know, Tegna owns KGW, and they own, I think it's 60 stations across the country. Really solid, just great stations. And so we thought, you know what? We report on Oregon and Washington every single day, but do you ever wonder how is this going, in all of the other, states? I mean, this is basically 50 plans happening all at once. So I asked reporters at our Tegna stations in California, Texas, Florida, Colorado, and Ohio to sit down with me and just talk to me about what's working, what's not, biggest complaints. And, the takeaway, at least among those 6 states, and I tried to do a cross-section of the country, and I tried to get some really, big states like California and Texas. And really the takeaway is no one is hitting it out of the park. No one, at least out of those 6 states, is really, really nailing it. Everyone's doing kind of average or below average. And that's just not opinion. That's based on the data and numbers.
Right.
So of those people that we talked to, how does Oregon rank among them? Like, where in that lineup do we fall?
So, the numbers are updated every day. But when I did the story, we were 21st in terms of getting the amount of, vaccines that we have into people's arms. So when I did the story a couple of days ago, it was 82%, which is decent. That's pretty good. I remember, when we first started this thing, we were 38th, 39th on the list in terms of getting the vaccines that we have into people's arms. And then, compare that. And everyone was about that. I mean, in California, everyone was pretty much in the 20s on that panel.
I was curious, Cristin, you heard, again, to rattle through all of them, Texas, Florida, Colorado, California. It sounded to me like the Colorado reporter was really saying that their state was ahead of the curve. My takeaway from that report was that Colorado, of those states that you were discussing, really seemed to have itself ahead of the rest.
When it comes to seniors, yes. So they don't have it figured out, and I would not say that it's going, smoothly in every area. But when it comes to seniors, which is a huge point of this, because seniors are sadly, that's the age group dying from corona, from COVID. They have vaccinated 70% of people 70 and up in Colorado. So that's big. I mean, you compare that, and that was a really huge takeaway because that's just such a huge. That's what everyone's talking about here in Oregon, just our percentage of seniors, and in Washington vaccinated. In Oregon, I know you're going to ask me, in Oregon, it's at last check, it was around 30% of seniors vaccinated. Washington was 50%, Florida, 50%. And so, that's 70%. That is something to really brag about, to get those most vulnerable done.
So a lot of people, too, are wondering, when can I get the shot? When can the general public get the COVID vaccine? And we had big news with the Biden administration announcing the national supply was going to be more than expected and moving up that timeline. Can you kind of address that?
Yes. So, on the vaccine team, Pat Dorsch really does the day of vaccine stories. He's my expert. He's the person I go to for, when are we going to get the shot? But the latest timeline is, people, that don't really fit into a category. So pretty much just everyone should get it by July 1st. But that timeline will probably be moved up because, like you said, the federal supply is increasing. On Fridays, we do get media availability with the governor, with the Oregon Health Authority. And so usually something good or big comes out of that. So I could imagine them explaining those timelines, bumping those timelines up.
We've had those mass vaccination clinics like at the Oregon Convention Center and at the airport up and running now for a few weeks. And, we're still hearing from viewers. We had a viewer this morning, we shared a text who said, and, I'm going to take her word for it, that she spent 5 hours on the phone yesterday. She said it took 92 calls, like 92 dials, and then she waited on hold for 90 minutes. But in the end, she did get her vaccine appointment. So I know that there are still a lot of frustrating moments for a lot of people who want to get that vaccine. But what improvements have we seen? What is working well right now, would you say, at those mass vaccination sites?
So we get so many emails about the vaccine. I mean, I cannot tell you how many people email us about, first it was problems, but we also hear from a lot of people about how great, how smoothly it's running at the convention center. Our manager, we were emailing about it last night, John Tierney, and I said, We need to get in there. We need to show how well this is going, because we have done so many stories. I'm pretty much on air every night kind of criticizing someone about this rollout. And we keep hearing that the convention center is going so well. Unfortunately, they've really not allowed us to go in, which is really a shame, because I think it's important to not just show what's not working. You need to show what's working. People need to see that, what, something, they've gotten it together. It's running smoothly. Basically, the reason given is there are so many providers in the convention center, and there's some patient privacy rules. But I think we can get over that hurdle. It's an important story to tell, and we're going to keep pushing, because we don't want to just take their video for it. I mean, that's not what we do. That's not what journalists do, right? We want to tell our own story.
Well, just anecdotally, literally yesterday, I got a text from a family member who had just taken his 94-year-old father to the convention center for a COVID vaccine. And he said, hey, they had their stuff together. They were in and out in 45 minutes. So that was a positive thing. And then Virginia Carlson, conversely, on the stream says, I tried for a week to get a shot for my 86-year-old dad. No luck. Too difficult in the metro area for our vulnerable. So it's kind of, all over the place.
That is a very common. I mean, I think getting an appointment is one thing, and it's hard. These sites, there are so many sites that you can go on and try to get an appointment, and none of them can handle a lot of web traffic. So getting an appointment, according to a lot of people that we hear from, it is very hard. Once you get the appointment, I think then that's when people are saying, you know what, once I got the appointment, then I got to the convention center, the volunteers were on it, it didn't take a terribly long time, and I was able to get the vaccine. So there are just so many stories to tell.
They moved the clinic to the exhibit hall, right? Just recently, because it's a little closer to the parking garage for folks who are maybe not as mobile, a little bit easier for them. Hopefully that's helping.
Exactly. And we'd love to show that too. I mean, that's great. When you are doing something for the very first time and you're like, you know what? It would probably be better to move locations, even though, that's a pretty big undertaking. I also think that's a good sign. Another story I've been doing, and you just showed some pictures when I was talking earlier, I've been doing a lot of stories about adult foster care homes. Mm-hmm. So these are people who live in these smaller, and they're there right there, yes, thank you. These are people who live in smaller residential homes, maybe 5 people. And these are seniors, these are people that, have mobility issues, or maybe, they need help. It's basically, imagine a long-term care facility or a nursing home, only it's run out of someone's home. And so there are thousands of people, more than 5,000 people in Oregon who live in these homes. Well, they can't go to the convention center. They can't go to the airport drive-through. And they need the vaccine brought to them. And so originally, when this whole vaccine rollout started in the middle of December, the state said, okay, all of these people will get vaccinated through the federal program, through the federal pharmacy program. Well, that just did not work. So these homes would have appointments with CVS. CVS was supposed to come to the home, and they just wouldn't show up. And we did so many stories on this. We heard from so many people saying, yes, that's happening to my mom. That's happening to me. That's happening to the, adult foster care home I run. And it was really sad. I mean, talk about vulnerable people.
Absolutely.
They had no voice. They
Absolutely.
had no voice. Yes. And so we really kind of took it upon. We said, we are not going to stop. We're not stopping until we get a plan. We can't just do one story and move on. And so finally, we were able to report some good news on that. Counties like Multnomah County Public Health, they are kind of all came together and they're doing mobile clinics. Huge undertaking. I mean, on top of everything else with the vaccine, now these county public health departments have to get volunteers together and, now that they're in charge of this, they're going to have to go to these adult foster care homes, but it's so important. And I'm so happy to be able to report on, some positive news on that front.
We've got a question here from Joshua Madrid, one of our regulars, Cristin, who is with us almost every morning. Good morning, Joshua. He says, is there any indication on how getting an appointment will work as we open up the vaccine to more and more people?
That's a really good question. Another reporter on the vaccine team, Galen Etlin, he does a lot of stories about pharmacies and how they're joining in on this. Did you guys run that story this morning on, the appointments for CVS and Walgreens opened yesterday at 5 p.m. They anchored the 5 I filled in for Laurel. So I think the general public, a lot of people will be turning to those pharmacies, those national pharmacies to get an appointment. I think that would be better because hopefully they can handle some web traffic. These local sites have not.
I was telling the team this week that I was in Walgreens over in Clackamas County, one of them, and I was picking up something else, and there were people in there. There was an older couple and then a gentleman who was, just solo, but they were getting COVID shots in there. That seemed to be fine, and that was even before the big announcement where they opened it up to more people. So I think you're absolutely right. If we can get all the doses into all the various pharmacies that are participating, that is going to help with the flow of everything.
Well, the two big headlines really came out back to back almost between pharmacies providing the shots and then the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So we thought, between the two of those, we're really going to see an improvement, so to speak, in the vaccine rollout nationally. And I don't know if you were going to speak to that, Cristin, before I interrupt you there, but I was also curious if you knew when we were really going to see the impacts of those two stories here locally.
I think soon. I really do. I mean, OHA will not give a timeline on the Johnson & Johnson, when it's going to get here. But that's such a game changer. I mean, I agree with you, Joe. I think with the J&J and then the, CVS, actually doing those vaccinations, I think will be huge. When you talk about pharmacies, Brenda, you walked in, you said, was it Walgreens?
Yep.
When you walked into Walgreens and saw those people getting vaccinated, that is what West Virginia has been doing since December. I mean, it was no secret. Everyone could have kind of followed their lead once we saw what was working. I think that's why it's just so important to pivot. But West Virginia, coupled with they said, no, we actually don't want to use CVS and Walgreens. We are going to ship this to all of our local pharmacies because people in West Virginia, they trust their pharmacists. They trust going into these local places, and they did it, and they've been doing so well. They topped the list in terms of doses used and getting people vaccinated. So I think, it's something to learn. I think it's something hopefully other states will adopt.
Absolutely. And, all the public health officials are saying, hey, whatever vaccine you can get, if it's offered to you, take it. The J&J vaccine is great because it's one dose. It doesn't need that ultra cold storage like the Pfizer does. But yeah, whatever you guys can get, take it.
Absolutely. Yes. I think that's very true.
Cristin, we've referenced the vaccine team here at KGW a few times. You certainly a part of it. You mentioned Pat Doris, Galen Etlin. Those are some of the faces, and then there's a whole group of people behind the scenes. I feel like we're using it so often now in our newscast, the vaccine team, the vaccine team. Maybe just the name alone is losing its impact because this really is a dedicated group. Can you explain why we set this up, who's on it, and really what it means for your day-to-day job here at KGW?
Yes, this is just such a huge story, and we knew it was going to be going on for a long time, months and months and months. And so, we put together this vaccine team. So just a team approach. So Pat Doris, does, vaccine stories pretty much every day. He's leading the newscast on the big story of the day related to vaccines. I've been doing some of the more in-depth stories or investigations, kind of holding people accountable, or, sitting down with, like my most recent story, with reporters all across the country. Galen is doing the pharmacy stories, or really, anything else, because there's so many things to cover. And then, yes, we have a digital person, David Mann. We have producer extraordinaire who does a ton on Sunrise, Andrew Dorn. And our manager, John Tierney, is, kind of in charge of it. And it has worked so well. It's the best way to cover something like this, because then nothing falls through the cracks. If you have one person, traditionally in news, we give one person one beat.
Right.
And you just cannot do it. There are too many stories. And so things really fall by the way. But if I personally could spend a week on a story, or 2 weeks on a story, and then Pat's still on there every day. So it has worked really well, not to pat ourselves on the back, but it's just such a good idea, and it's actually working. So I bet you we'll do this again for other things. I could see it. I think the vaccine story will be a big story for a really long time. But even just having a COVID team, we could have started.
Absolutely. Sheila Speck on our stream, this is a great idea. She says that she belongs to a group of friends that let those not vaccinated know when they hear of a site opening. My friend told me that it took her like less than an hour to get the appointments, and they got them the next day. So it took 20 minutes to get there. But again, she belongs to a group of friends, and it's kind of a network. They're looking out for each other and like, hey, this is going to open, do this, do that.
They have their own
Whatever
vaccine
works.
team.
Kind of, yeah, that's fantastic.
That is such a good idea. And Brenda, that's the thing, and I'm sure everyone, can relate to this. It's almost, sadly, it is almost, who do you know? Who do you know? Who's going to send you that link at the right time, who can then send it to someone else to get the vaccine? And that we've heard that a lot. You kind of have to know, you kind of have to know.
Don't get me started. I went on a major rampage about that. You're talking about people who do not deserve the vaccine, but are you getting
not eligible
forwarded? Yes, excuse me. Eligible, because that's what we were talking about. It's people who forward links from companies and then friends of friends of friends get them, and they're not in any of the groups that are eligible right now.
Okay, I was not talking about that, but that is such a big story, and we know it's happening. And I did a story when Salem first opened, when the Salem site first opened. I did a story on people admitting that they were doing that. I interviewed a man who has a blog, and he said, look, I'm 65. I know my group isn't open yet. My wife has underlying conditions. We're just going to try and do it. And they did get it. And I interviewed this really interesting medical ethicist. He was great, Courtney Campbell. And he said, this will not work. If everyone is out for themselves and you are not following the rules and you only care about yourself, the entire system will crumble, because this in it together is not, it's not just something nice to say. Truly, we have to be in it together. You have to care about your neighbor and not jump the line. We all know people who did, and it's not how it works.
Well, yeah, it's like the elevators have a capacity weight limit, right? It says no more than 2,800 pounds. If you try to stick 3,600 pounds in there, the elevator's not going to work. You don't want to be in that elevator.
Can I do one more question, Cristin, for you, as we're getting to the end of your time? But Neil on the stream says, have you heard from people who signed up at the Get Vaccinated Oregon and actually received a call back, resulting in an appointment at the convention center?
I'd have to look. I feel like the answer is yes. That's pretty specific. Right. So
yeah.
I have heard from people who missed the call, which is unfortunate, but
that at least tells you that their call is being made.
Yeah, everyone has complaints and they're all valid, but you know that's the system, so you really have to keep your ringer on.
So Susan Decker, also on the stream, says, is the airport site still running? I still see the tents, but the traffic to and from isn't there.
I'm pretty sure yes, but I don't know.
It's not an every day of the week thing. I can tell you that much. So there, you could see that on a day where they're not actually open and think, where's everyone at?
And then Christy Shirk one more says, my husband and I have had our first shot and are set up for our second. We went to a pharmacy, and then she says, glad I live in a small county, right? She's not vying with quite as many people.
So glad she said that, because we have done a lot of stories just kind of on the rollout in the Portland metro area and just all of the problems. But smaller counties and rural areas, they do seem to have it down. I'm not saying it's perfect, but we also hear from a lot of people who are saying exactly what she said. You know, that it was not that difficult to get it.
Ann Catherine is voicing some frustration because we didn't address her question. And I promise you, Ann Catherine, it's because this thing moves so fast on the phone. We do miss a lot of the questions. But I went back to find hers. And so maybe we'll end here because I know we're running out of time. And I don't know if you have an answer to this.
What if I don't have the answer?
I know. Well, we're going to ask it anyway. So at least she knows we're trying. Ann Catherine says, I know that both of the first two vaccines, the Pfizer and the Moderna, it was announced that if you have a serious allergic condition, that you might not want to take them, that you should consult your physician first, right? She says, have you heard anything about the J&J vaccine? Is it going to be a better vaccine for people with serious allergic conditions like Catherine or Ann Catherine?
Sorry, Ann, I don't know. That is a really good question, though. We get so many emails into the Verify email about allergies, about, you know, I'm allergic to this, should I take that? I will look into it for you.
I think you should do one of those, you know, you're on the big screen and you have somebody's question, you should pull that from the stream.
I will.
Because I'm sure a lot of people would want to do that. Cristin Severance, you know, I'm telling you, your investigative reporting is amazing. Your work on the vaccine team is much appreciated. Thank you so much for getting up early with us and coming in here and sharing a little bit of that knowledge.
Oh, of course. It's my pleasure. You guys are great. I love talking with you about my story. So thanks for having me.
Have a good weekend, Cristin. Have a good weekend. Sunrise Extra viewers, we'll see you Monday.